Welcome to Revolutionary Optimism. Issues like economic hardship, political violence, and the rise of authoritarianism have left many Americans feeling more despair than ever. Fortunately, physician, humanitarian, and social justice advocate Dr. Paul Zeitz has identified revolutionary optimism as a new cure for that hopelessness and cynicism. Once you commit yourself as a revolutionary optimist, you can bravely unleash your personal power, #unify with others, and accelerate action for repair, justice, and peace. On this podcast, Dr. Zeitz is working to provide you with perspectives from leaders on their strategies for overcoming adversity and driving forward revolutionary transformation with optimism. In this episode, Dr. Zeitz is talking with Maury Giles. Maury Giles is the CEO of Braver Angels, the nation's largest grassroots movement working to renew America's civic culture by helping people bridge political divides. He leads a growing national effort to encourage what the organization calls courageous citizenship, learning to disagree without contempt, rebuild trust, and solve problems across differences. Maury brings more than 30 years of leadership experience across journalism, market research, and experience design, with a focus on understanding human behavior and building high-trust engagement strategies. Before becoming CEO, he spent 5 years volunteering with Braver Angels as a moderator and leader in its bipartisan legislative work. A Republican based in Salt Lake City, Utah, Maury is a husband and father of 10 and a blended family. When he isn't leading national movements, he can be found volunteering with CASA, serving in his church, or refereeing high school football games, an ongoing practice in maintaining fairness, discipline, and calm under pressure. Here's your host, Dr. Paul Zeitz.
Hey, Maury, it's so great to have you here on the show. Really, so thrilled.
Great to be with you, Paul.
I'd love you to help my listeners understand, your background and, what it brought you to this service in this role at this time. You said that you felt like you were answering a calling of some sort. So I'm really intrigued by that. And, we really want to just get to know you and understand where you're coming from.
I appreciate that. And I have been on the road quite a bit. My wife and I, when I decided to go ahead and accept this job, kind of realized the first year was going to be a lot of getting around and meeting everybody and trying to connect with folks. I had been a volunteer for 5 years. And one of the things I felt like as a volunteer is I wanted to know more of the organization and the people. And I felt like one of my primary responsibilities coming on board as the new CEO is to get out and be with the people and to understand. And so we had this hit the ground listening tour, and I've been to, I think 17 or 18 cities now. And that's separate from all the just working with other organizations. And I feel like I live in Washington, D.C. right now with so many things going on there. But so I got into this because you're right. I have described it as answering a calling. And I think that's the best way to describe it, because I had been in a 30 plus year career that started in journalism and then political campaigns and then in corporate America. And it was always about how do you connect with people? How do you drive strategy, either with what you say, what you do, with your product, what the experience is with nonprofits, with for-profits. But over the years, I began to try to scratch this itch of like, I got to feel like, am I doing something that's leaving the world a better place beyond just my career and the work I'm doing? So I started finding clients and that I could work with in that space. And I actually was working with the National Constitution Center at the company I was with before for the year prior, working on their America 250 strategy. And that was one of our clients. But I really felt like
we got stuff to talk about more.
Yeah, good. We'll have to talk more about that. And I really felt like, but what am I doing that's leaving the world a better place to apply the skills and experiences in my life that's come together? And so I started doing a lot more volunteering with Braver Angels, with American Promise, a lot of constitutional amendment related to campaign finance spending. I doing volunteer work with Common Sense American, and Keith Allred and his group, and work with CASA, if you've ever heard of that, where you have a foster kid that you kind of go visit and take apart. But it wasn't until last year when I got a call from another volunteer within Braver Angels who knew me, and we had done some workshops together, politically very different, she and I, and said, hey, are you going to apply for this job? And I'm like, what job? Like, I have a job. And they said, well, there's, but David Blankenhorn, one of the founders, is stepping down, and they've hired an executive search firm, and they're going to go after getting the first CEO that they've hired, and we think you should apply. And that set a few things in motion that actually has really changed my life. Because if you had asked me a year ago what I'd be doing right now, doing this as the CEO of Brave Angels, never would have guessed it. But now that I'm here doing it, I do feel this answer to a call. It's an intense calling, but
Well, you
it's
got a
one that I
literal
really feel.
call too, right? You had someone actually
I got a
literally call
literal
you.
phone call.
But I
That's
think
right.
I want to just like acknowledge you if I can. Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah. I just want to say that you answered the call. Like you responded to whatever that person said to you, and it opened up. You were open and receptive. And I think that is extraordinary because like that is unique and that is a beautiful thing that you shared. So
No, I
responding,
appreciate that.
yeah, it's also
I appreciate
receptivity
that.
and readiness. You were ready
Yeah.
to receive the calling, and you
Yeah.
received it. You didn't have to. It was a
Well, to your
choice.
point, doors open, but we still have to walk through them, right?
That's my point. Yeah, actually, much clearer.
Yeah, and this is a massive change for me.
Yeah.
I mean, in many, many ways, but it's the right thing to be doing at the right time.
Yes, I call that shape shifting, which is something that I've done many times in my life. It used to torture me, and I used to struggle with it. But now I embrace it and go, oh, it's a form of growth. So
I love that shape shifting.
everything you may have done, until now has prepared you to grow and stretch into this new role. And you've done it so magnificently. I have to say I'm biased. I'm a member of Braver Angels and committed to Braver Angels, and my organization, Unify USA, is a member of the Braver Network. I work very closely with Braver Angels at the chapter level and at the coordination level. So I just love the whole vision of it. I'm an independent, so I don't fit into the red blue paradigm. So I wonder, I just feel like the majority of Americans now are identifying as independent, and many are shedding from both the R and the D side. So I don't know how you're all thinking about that at Braver Angels, but I just want to throw that out there. And I'm really most interested in your visionary approach to courageous citizenship, because I think as I've come to understand how you've come to this and your vision and intent, extremely excited. I want you to share that with my listeners, if you could.
Well, no, I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity. And I should say, in all sincerity, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate the work that you do. And I'm familiar with a lot of it. And I've seen you on the Braver Network calls. And honestly, this work is because of the individual people across the country who are answering the call to do what they can within their own sphere of
Right.
influence. And honestly, I believe that that's the biggest thing as we have pivoted to our next chapter as an organization. So we've been around for 9 years, right? And we'll be hitting 10 years at the end of, in November, December of this year. And it first started after the Trump Clinton election, and just with the notion that can we all get in the same room? Can we get Trump voters, Clinton voters in the same room and talking to each other? And that was novel and somewhat countercultural. And it's even more countercultural today in so many other ways. And what we really are looking at, and when we looked at everything that we've been focused on, we have the thing called the Braver Angels Way. And it's kind of a credo. Like when I worked with many different large corporations, there's really powerful vision and alignment that can come and motivation when people have a credo that they say, we all believe in living this way. And the Braver Angels Way goes through and articulates how we look at each other, how we talk to each other, and that there's no idea that's not worth hearing and seeing. And those that are hobbyists or focused in the space, might call and talk about pluralism, right? Because that's the true reality of what it is. But most everyday people probably don't use that word or that terminology often, right? But what we have realized is that 2026 is a very different time than 2016 when we started as an organization. Dialogue is still very important because you can't do anything if you can't talk to people. And the irony with our technology, digital driven society and economy now, when we're in theory most connected we've ever been, we're the most disconnected we've ever been as people because we're not talking to each other. We're not being exposed to different points of view. Everything that we, are coming across in our lives especially when it comes to societal framing of policy or, legislation, or the act of legislating, that it's all framed as this existential crisis, that it's all about you defending your team over the other one, and it's no longer about I'm right and you're wrong. It's trigger words and litmus tests for I'm good and you're evil,
Yeah.
even down to which halftime show you watched in the Super Bowl, which I experienced in my own household while we're watching the game. Now, the game wasn't super exciting in the first half, but the halftime, all of a sudden, who wanted to watch which halftime show became this big symbol of whether you're good or you're evil. And there's so many of those things that are happening today. And how do you change that? How do we go forward? Well, the challenge that I see, and that's been very, very clear to me, is that we cannot have a self-government that's at the core of the American system if we can't govern ourselves. And the govern of self means being able to realize that I have the agency to act instead of react. That when I hear something that feels different than me, I don't have to do what the systemic incentives in society might reward me to do, of go attack, go fight for my side. I can instead choose to act with dignity toward and curiosity to try to understand. Well, tell me more about your life experience that shapes the way you view this issue. One of the most powerful questions that we have, people. But when I start to realize my own agency, then that can go against all of the pressures to feel like there's no hope. I can't have optimism. I don't know. I can't do anything about this. To me, that's the key to that revolutionary optimism. It's like owning the countercultural movement to say, no, absolutely. I have 100% control over the one thing that matters most, my own agency. And I can use that agency to act together locally across difference. And when I do that, and that's our theory of change on this, is that when individuals do that and communities start to recognize I can act together locally, then we begin to realize there are shared American ideals worthy of defense. And that's a controversial statement if you just say it straight up. Are there shared American ideals worthy of defense? Well, I believe there are, but we don't see them when we're not practicing our part in the process. And that's what we call courageous citizenship. Intentionally engaging across difference to build together. That's what this system was envisioned and built upon. The American experiment was built upon the premise that we citizens, what Washington called the most important office in this new republic, that we would engage across difference of the variety of different points of view, that factions would emerge, but factions would bring forward ideals, and we would have to resist factions in terms of overcoming their natural intent to try to dominate one versus another. And if we can't engage in that dialogue, then we can't truly live the notion of self-governance, which is what Benjamin Franklin, right? What do we have? Well, democracy, a republic is a republic if we can keep it, right? And so that work of ours, we have sort of allowed ourselves to feel like we're distant from it and that we don't have anything to do with it, when in fact we are it.
Yes, this is very profound and critical. That what I'm hearing you say is very aligned with the theory of change, or the theory of transformation, if you will, of revolutionary optimism, which is like self-growth, self-healing, evolving oneself to act instead of react. And that is really the hard work of it, moment to moment, being in control of your emotional state and not letting your reptilian brain, react and get triggered, and knowing how to manage triggers. There's, we go into all that as well. And I've done some of your Braver Angels workshops on political conflict in families. You mentioned the Super Bowl. I have 5 sons. Okay. And I was just like, wow, he's got 10. You guys, vacation together, or do you all watch the Super Bowl together? Or how do you connect with that kind of large size family? And how do you deal with this? Because in my family, there are parts of our family we're not talking to, not by my choice. I'm like, I just think you have to embrace multiple perspectives. So I went to your family workshop on how to talk politically with families. It's tough. How do you keep
It's
your
so
family
tough.
together?
It's so tough, and I'm dealing with a lot of the same. So life is complex by design, I think, and I personally believe that life, the purpose of life, is to be able to make decisions of who you want to become as an individual and what you're going to be motivated by. And are you going to be self-centered, or are you going to be focused on the greater good and other people, and have empathy drive yourself, or dominance and arrogance, or what have you, and self-centered view. But life experience is complicated within families. Now, our dynamic is kind of unique. Although every family has their own uniqueness.
Yeah.
We're a blended family where my wife is the widow of my best friend. He died 15 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I was best man at their wedding. And she and I got married 10 years ago. She has 6 kids. I didn't really know her. I was best man at their wedding, but we met later after he had and anyhow, she has 6 kids. I have 4. And our kids are from the age of 31 to 18. So when you say we have kids, they're grown adults. But if anyone hasn't been a parent of adult kids, you don't stop being a parent. In fact, the complexity of parenting, I think, gets far more intense when adulthood enters into the equation. And with our 10 kids, who I love each one of them with all my heart, but we have some in our family right now that are not talking.
Oh, okay.
And there's been episodes. So the Charlie Kirk assassination, which happened 20 miles down the road from where we live. My wife she went back to get another degree, and she graduated from there. We have high school graduations there. We had family members who were at the event where he was assassinated. That event led to some family on a chat thread of just intense anger across across some of the siblings. And the reason is because ideologically, our kids are 5 and 5, red and blue. If you want to say red and blue, and I don't know if they'd think of themselves as red or blue, but in terms of, let's just use the polarizing figure of Trump in the moment. There's 5 that are more maybe supporters and voters, 5 definitely not, a variety, and doesn't follow biology, doesn't follow gender. It's a mix, and it's led to a lot of dialogue that's been difficult. And most recently, we had an event where we were together as some of they don't live in Utah. All of my wife's kids live here in Utah, but my kids are spread in multiple states, but we still stay connected on a chat thread. And most recently, when we went to war with Iran on a Saturday morning, that morning it happened, there was a post in the family thread, and I could watch where it was going to go, and it went there again. And here I am thinking, wait a minute, I practice this stuff. This is what I do for a job. But having those conversations with my kids and helping them see each other, there's a couple things that I've learned. One is you have to show that consistent sense of curiosity and love for them and respect for their point of view, and help them know the authenticity. Sometimes, because of my job, even on the chat thread over that weekend, there was pushback on me saying, why are you telling us how to talk? We're all grown adults. We can talk to each other how we want.
Oh my God. Thank you.
And
my kids tell me what to say and do all the time. Yeah. They're my mentors, the cacophony of them. Yeah. They're very powerful.
And it was hard. And I had to,
in a good way.
I had to step back and say, okay, listen, I'm just offering this point of view, but also one-on-one. Like, I have to work with each one of my 10 kids to have one-on-one dialogue so that they understand that the dynamics amongst each other manifest a certain thing, but they know that I genuinely care. And I think I do well at times and not at others, but man, is it complex. And everyone's having this in different ways. And the skills of how to engage with each other, you can't teach those skills if there's not an interest. But if you can be present and win them and meet them where they are, then when they're ready to discuss about it, hey, this is what I've tried. But mostly I think it's about that skill that we practice at Braver Angels is, well, tell me more about your life experience that shapes how you're feeling and experiencing this moment right now.
Yeah, beautiful. I call all this peace crafting, where you're talking with dignity and respect, like you're saying. And this is leading me, I'm getting a little emotional now because it's so profound and so critical what you're saying. And you're touching my own life experience. And I'm sure many of my listeners are going through very similar things. So I wanted to explore with you the kind of core value, I think of it as, of interdependence. And I feel like what I am experimenting with in this, yeah, in these polarized times is discussing and exploring interdependence. In that, if we recognize our interdependence, then everything can be transformed. Then you're more inspired to act instead of react. I'm gonna yeah, adapting from your teaching. But
Yeah.
interdependence for me is the idea that we are woven together, that my well-being is inseparable from yours. And that as a nation, it's not a collection of tribes, as you've already said, but we are actually an interdependent single fabric. And I'm just wondering how that lives within you personally, but and also with Braver Angels. And also, yeah, we'll get into describing the I call it the Braver Angels movement. We'll
Yeah.
let's hear about that for you, and then we can talk about the movement.
I think you're hitting the essence of one of a few things that was so revolutionary about the American experiment with the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and the way they resolved those things is this notion that our success, our well-being, our even intrinsic worth is individual and collective at the same time.
Hmm.
One of the things I don't want to forget, I want to mention in this because I'm guessing, have you read Jeff Rosen's book on the pursuit of happiness?
I've scanned it. I haven't read the whole thing,
Yeah.
but yeah, I know Jeff.
One of
Yeah.
the core things I think that sets the stage for this whole interdependence piece, and it gets to what you were saying earlier about our self-improvement. We think of pursuit of happiness, right? In today's world, in today's day and age, we think of it, I think, predominantly as I can choose to go pursue the things that make me happy. I have that independence to go do the stuff, make the money, pursue my, the American dream. But if you look at the foundational theoretical frameworks that the framers who wrote and used those words when they penned the pursuit of happiness, that isn't what it meant at all. They were drawing upon the earlier writings that came before them of the notion that the pursuit of happiness is the pursuit of self-governance and the improvement of your own individual contribution to the greater good.
Right.
And that we need to do that. And his book, The Pursuit of Happiness, is one of the best I've ever read about it.
Okay.
So the reason I bring that up is in the Declaration of Independence, right? Here you had these 13 colonies coming together. And honestly, if you do much research and reading about them and about their lives and about what's going on, they didn't like each other a lot. They had some fundamental differences on religion, on economic models, on so many different things. But they also had this same in common of realizing they were escaping tyranny. They were wanting to be able to have liberty, and they recognized that we have a chance to do something. And they had studied democracy, and they had seen that anytime those principles have been applied in its purest form, that there were problems that emerged. And so they said, you know what? We're going to declare our independence. But they closed that document with one of the most powerful lines ever that we don't stay focused on very much in the study of the Declaration of Independence. They pledged to each other three things that closes with our sacred honor. So when they were about to put their signatures, that they all intended, if you read their writings, they expected that if this did not work, they were going to die and all of their family members associated with it. But they pledged to each other their sacred honor. So in the very document that they're declaring to the world their independence, they are asserting the centrality of their interdependence and saying that, yes, we disagree on a lot of things, but we know that we're pledging our sacred honor to each other. And that might not mean as much in today's day and age, but those words being written in handwriting with their signatures right underneath it, I think is a powerful play. And that's something that we have to renew. We have to renew that pledge. We're at Braver Angels, our June 25th to 28th convention, and we're going back to Philadelphia where that all happened. And our whole theme is a pledge renewed. And it's that idea of interdependence. It's recognizing that I don't have to be really good friends with you. I might not ever be good friends with you. I might be good friends with you. But what I am recognizing that as a member of this society, that your viewpoint and your well-being is intrinsically tied to mine. And the diversity of our views and opinions, actually, as James Madison wrote in the Federalist, I believe it was Federalist 10, that diversity would become the greatest strength of this country as it got big.
Mm.
If we practice what we call courageous citizenship, if we recognize that interdependence does not mean sacrificing your own values. That's the thing I hear all the time is this is a culture where I got to go fight for my values. We think we all have different values, but Jonathan Haidt's work and others have shown we all have the same set of values. We weight them differently in different situations, which leads to different concerns and solutions. But most people want the same things. And the beauty of this country is we can pursue them together, interdependently, like none other in the history of humankind. If we step away from the selfishness that I think drives the way we're operating today.
Yes, and thank you. Wow, I'm like, you're so eloquent and so clear. It really, it's helping me understand myself even as I'm listening to you. And the way Desmond Tutu talked about it, who I had, he's over my shoulder. I had the opportunity to work with him in my past, and
Wow.
he talked about the biggest opportunity for humanity is us recognizing our interdependence. And it's just it's actually the truth, you know. So it's just like it's just like taking off the veil and recognize that is actually what's happening. And I'm trying that out with my family too. You know, it's like we are interdependent, even if we don't agree. It's not about agreeing. We don't need to agree.
Well,
Yeah. The goal is not agreement. We
and
want
do you think people today are afraid of interdependence?
I
Because
just don't think people think about it. You know,
yeah,
if you think about like, you know, when there's an emergency, that veil gets removed and everyone comes into play, even people that aren't talking. Like, and that happens at a community and societal level, like after an earthquake or, you know, a big disaster, even after during COVID, there was like, there was
yeah.
an awakening of that interdependence. There was a disruption, and then we kind of saw, you know, you saw it differently. You see it, you know, and then you forget about it. And the
Yeah,
polarized state, it's a reactive state that prevents you from seeing it. It's actually
yeah,
so when you're in action mode and you're, you know, working on behalf of renewing American democracy, then you automatically start seeing it, and you see others like I'm seeing you now, and our listeners are seeing us now. They're connecting with people who are in that awareness of interdependence. So it's very easy to flip into it. Actually, the other beautiful thing is that it's you we experience interdependence as love and trust. So like that's a simple measure. Like wherever you experience love of something, that's recognizing your interdependence. So but I really love your courageous citizenship, and you were talking about like a you know, bravery is contagious. So Braver Angels is contagious. The Braver Angels movement with the faith groups and the Braver Network and all this ecosystem connection that you've all brought us all together. You know, you're bringing me and many others I know. And we're, you know, this book, I wanted to just ask you, does Courageous Citizenship include? This is a book by Helene Landemore, a top political science professor at Yale University, who is a leading global expert on deliberative citizens' assemblies. She just published a book about making the case for citizen rule. And she talks about the power of love as the experience of citizens' assemblies. And so I wanted to ask you about your view about how this applies, how, you know, for our country at this moment, going into the 250th.
I think it's a critical element for us to be able to see ourselves in the system and recognize that we are actually a central part of this, and not only a central part. I go back to that Washington, George Washington saying, "Citizen, the most important role." And our society is so complex and so big that we kind of think that we don't have anything to do with anything, and so we can't contribute and we can't approach it that way. But we're actually finding that we can motivate people when we start to help them realize, look at your elected officials as being on tap, not on top.
Hmm.
It's a different framing, because there was a rigorous debate in the formation of this country around representative republic versus true democracy, right? And there had been a lot of study that if you read the way they debated those and looking at way pure democracy where everybody votes and then it comes together, that there were challenges to that. And so they came up with the notion of drawing from different things in practice of republic, where we vote for people and they go represent us. But in the process, the expectation was there was more interaction and more contribution to what representing us meant. Not that it would be the faction, meaning the party,
Yeah.
and then loyalty to a platform forget everything else like we've arrived at today. Factions and parties have been around since the beginning. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, they all warned against them. And then all except for Washington, they participated in them. And they recognized it was going to be necessary there. That's why they created checks and balances. They made it to where if one party won, it doesn't mean you can just run everything through. And that frustrates people if we're being told that my tribe just won. Why can't we do everything we wanted? Because it's skipping past interdependence. It's skipping past the notion that actually, as citizens, and I know that's weaponized today in the current immigration debate. I think we have to take it back and say, no, I'm not talking about legal status. I'm talking about being a member of this society, that we need to be able to recognize that we contribute. And doing it at the local level is where we see the most impact, because people begin to realize, wait a minute, maybe factional loyalty is not actually the best way for me to be able to contribute my perspective on how society can improve and improve for all of us. And so citizen assemblies, the lure of democracy, I think it's worthy of approaching those things and debating and trying them to see how do they work? How do they contribute? I think where you run into an ideological divide is you'll have some people who will push against it, and it will rehash or bring back some of the debates back in when the founding of the government is, should everybody vote on everything, or should we have a Congress, and should we have the Senate, right? Well, I think technology allows us to explore ways that there's a little bit of both. That can come to that, but that should be debated. That should be discussed. It should be explored. But right now, I think the hurdle to that predominantly is we're not even framing that, most people, as something that we even like. What? Citizen assembly engagement? Like what? No, I don't want to talk about politics. It's too divisive. If I do, I'm going to go with my tribe, right? But in deep down, there's so much evidence to suggest that people know that's not healthy. People know that that's not sustainable.
Right.
And so I applaud these efforts to try to explore different ways of engaging and understanding that there's going to be different. Some people are going to like it, some people aren't. But the exploration of how we get more people to act instead of react and contribute, I believe it starts at the individual level, and it has to be hyper-local, that we need to help people recognize. And so our Citizen-Led Solutions is a program that we launched this last fall, which is really just helping encourage our local alliances that we have around the country that, look, you can identify a need, and it could be something that you build together or you solve together. And we're seeing it. As soon as we announced that, we put out some different case studies. We had a couple hundred different inquiries of, I want to try to do this. I want to try to do that. That's the spirit we're trying to drive. The difference of how we approach it from what I've seen of a lot of other organizations is that our little unique twist is, don't just go build with all the people that you are friends with and that think the same as you.
Right.
The power of the American experiment and courageous citizenship is to intentionally find people that might have a different point of view on it. But that's because we're saying, when you do that, when you show that curiosity, you're recognizing the intrinsic dignity in the other person. But more importantly, you're acknowledging the interdependence, that I need you. I need your view. I need my view. And by the way, his and her and there, and we think it's best happening if we try to do it locally and create a movement that you ultimately can reach a tipping point to get a culture change. And that's why our vision statement changed to be very simple. We envision an America where courageous citizenship is the honored norm. That's not what it is right now. And we want to get it there. And we know we're not going to be able to do it alone. We got to do it with people like you and all the others. That's why we have Braver Network, et cetera.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. Look, I'm learning so much. I mean, like the idea that the conclusion of the Declaration of Interdependence, sacred honor to each other. I mean, I hadn't thought about it that way, actually, that these folks were, expressing their sacred honor, a commitment, a covenant,
Yeah.
if you will, a
Pledge.
covenant
Pledge.
with each
Yeah.
other that we're doing this, and we're taking huge risk, even to our own lives.
Yeah.
And I think that that is accurate, about how people are feeling right now in our own country. I think the stakes are that high, and people are actually are having discussions about that. And so I just wondered if you could offer us, your sense making, if you will, of this moment in our history. I just want to say it's March 12th. I think it's day 12 of the Iran war. We're in the second year of the second Trump administration. Braver Angels started when Trump began his political career. And so we're 10 years into that basically. And what do you think's happening as we approach the midterms and, and the way forward here? You mentioned the tyranny that the Declaration of Independence was declaring. What's your sense of what's happening now?
Well, I think a couple things. First is another book that reminded me of when you were making that comment is Yuval Levine's book, American Covenant, is fascinating. And it's all about the Constitution. And he talks about how the Constitution is a covenant and the covenants have to be renewed. And that's those pledges. And I think we're facing right now a juncture point that's pretty significant of are we going to renew that covenant one with another? And I think there's a lot of difficult obstacles that are being thrown in our way that we have to overcome that are different for different people. I think there's a lot of folks who are seeing things what they would say and express as tyranny and authoritarianism and like what's happening here. And it's like, wait a minute, how is this happening in my country? And how can I can't possibly, I have to resist this. And that may be a choice that someone needs to do, that resistance, like protesting is a big part of the American experiment. At Brave Angels, we applaud that. That's not what we're focused on. We're focused on something that's different, engaging with people across difference. And we're not saying you shouldn't protest. If that's what you want to do, you should. You should go that. We think you should do it healthy in a way that's productive in the way that we've seen over our history. But we're saying courage. We're drawing upon the Aristotle writings of, because it's funny. I like to talk about the fact that you say, what's the opposite of cowardice? And almost every time someone say, well, courage or bravery, because they think that's where I'm going. And I'm like, well, actually, the opposite of cowardice, according to Aristotle, was recklessness. So do nothing, cowardice, burn it all down, recklessness, right? We're saying courage, which was the golden mean that Aristotle said is one of the golden means, is right in the middle. It's staying at the table to engage. And I think we're at a choice to say, are we going to renew that covenant? Are we going to say that that matters? For some people, it's being able to say, well, what do I do right now with all this stuff that's here? And I think those people who are feeling that way about Trump, I think one of the biggest challenges, and I see this in our work all the time, are you able to have a conversation with someone that supports Trump and look at their dignity and be curious about their perspective and say, tell me more about your life experience that shapes why you view this way? That's a hard thing for a lot of people on that side of the coin. If they hate Trump and they're focused on the tyranny and the authoritarianism, it's like, no, I can't talk to them.
Mm.
Well, I would argue that that's almost as big of a problem of the thing they're worried about, because there's an individual who made a choice to cast a vote a certain way, and they're being labeled as evil because of behavior that you see as evil from someone. And you go the other side. So if I'm someone that, no, I voted, let's say that I'm somebody that voted for Trump and now he's in office. There's a lot of this sense of vindication. My voice is being said, yeah, I don't like everything he's doing, but he's fighting my way and he's representing my voice. All of a sudden now, that is being framed as things that it's like I'm being trained to ignore the collateral damage to other people's lives with behavior a certain way because it's my tribe that's winning.
Right. Right.
And
And it's leading
that
to violence,
challenges,
though, Maury. Can you talk about that? I mean, like, I think
yeah,
there's like I've been in environments where it's on the left side, and they're stoking, fear to such a degree that people start talking violence. Same on the right. I've been in spaces, the same thing happens, and it's
yeah,
extremism, I think, when you're intentionally stoking fear and you're using that to control populations, and you are polarizing, and it's now leading to political violence. There were 150 attacks in the first half of 2025 in the United States, more than double the year before. I don't have the data yet on all of 2025. So this is like a
Well, and you
serious,
haven't.
we're at a tipping point. So I love your renewing the covenant, but how do we prevent civil violence, and create enough space, there, to renew the covenant, right? That is
Yeah.
the question.
I think it still comes back to the same answer, that it has to start with individuals choosing to act instead of react and owning that part of the process. I think one of the hard realities that we have to accept is to look in the mirror and say, the problems we're experiencing are a reflection of us as a people, what we are prioritizing and what we are allowing to happen and what we are rewarding.
Mhm.
We don't magically send 435 people to Congress every 2 years. There's elections and there's process that we go through. But I think more importantly than that, the digital social media sphere that we live in, operate in,
Mm.
and the instantaneous desire for gratification, like swipe left, swipe right. We have a rising generation that have been wrong. That they know that all they know is if they touch the screen, like if I touch the screen right now, I get the thing. Take it down to the simple thing of Amazon. Like I can get it at 1 o'clock. I don't need it at 1 o'clock, but I want it at 1 o'clock. Boom. Right. So we have to realize, I personally believe that those behaviors that add some benefit to our lives, but they are hyper selfish. They are hyper
Selfish.
self-focused. They are putting us in a position that justifies, wait a minute, I didn't get immediately what I wanted. So I need to go, that's not right. I need to fix that right now. I need to swipe left and swipe right on the country.
Mm,
It doesn't work that way.
great.
And we have to recognize that that's different. And so are we really going to allow that to continue to happen? Only we individually can choose to do that differently. And what that means, I believe, is to recognize that when we stop talking and deliberating with another, coercion and violence becomes the only alternative.
Right. Right.
I've heard some people say, yeah, well, sometimes that's needed, civil war as their case in point. Here's my retort. Here's my response on that is, well, hold on a second. Back then, there was something fundamentally that after every angle of attempt for from the Declaration of Independence up until 1860, that they had tried all these different facets to work on. They just fundamentally did not agree. There were some core value differences on that, very fundamental human rights. That led to no more dialogue, violence, and thank goodness we had Abraham Lincoln as the president in terms of how that pulled things together afterward. But point to one issue today that we have that same level of division that's not manufactured by the industrial outrage complex. It's not immigration. It's not abortion. It's not tariffs. It's not. We actually agree with each other far more than we disagree on the fundamentals of those policy issues. We play on the fringes of what we see happening that we think are wrong, which there's a lot of people that think a lot of people are wrong. We do not have a fundamental core issue that separates us other than the manufactured outrage. Only we can rise up against that. And I think it starts with each of us choosing to act instead of react.
Wow, that was profound. So, final question. We're coming into your big conference in June. As you know, there will be a large attempt by the current administration to wrap themselves in the Constitution and America 250 and say that what they're doing is what America 250 is all about. And I wanted to ask you, what do you hope the folks that attend your conference, your convention, what are they going to leave with? And what should we, as patriotic Americans, committed to human rights for all, willing to sacrifice our honor, commit our sacred honor to this cause? I think many people are at that point. What
Yeah.
I love your renew the American covenant. I think that, are we going to leave inspired to do that work? Because that would be a breakthrough.
That's our focus and our hope. So when we do our convention, we intentionally have an application process to be a delegate so that we can ensure that the people that show up are evenly divided across right, left, in the middle, because we need to be able to have that cross ideological differences to create the experience that we're trying to inspire and equip people to engage in. And so, as an organization, I think we'll celebrate anything that happens this year that points to shared American ideals and that this is a country and patriotism. But unfortunately, right now, I think patriotism has been weaponized in many different ways to mean something different than what we're trying to get at. We want our delegates to leave the convention with a clear vision that Braver Angels is moved toward this notion of courageous citizenship and working to make it a norm, an honored norm. We want this deepened belief in the effectiveness of that approach with the people that show up. And we want them to affirm that I can make a difference. And together we have the collective power to realize this vision. And so we've got a whole narrative arc that we're going through of focusing on the self at the beginning. Then we're going to focus on the local. Then we're going to focus on national, and all in the spirit of owning your part of the process, so people feel hope, they feel empowered, and they feel purpose. They have a sense of purpose. And I would encourage any and all of your listeners, come be a part of this. Come recognize that this is, if you're a conservative, if you voted for Trump, be a part of this. If you're a progressive or a liberal and you absolutely despise Trump, come be a part of this. If you're an independent and you don't like Trump or you like Trump, this isn't about Trump. This is about this country and the role that we're going to play in it. You have a president right now who I oftentimes, whatever your politics are, and if you voted for him or not, I think it's more healthy to recognize that he's the Dennis Rodman of politics. Meaning, if you know anything about NBA basketball, if we're going off the way Dennis Rodman played basketball, there was a reason Michael Jordan wanted him on his team, because Dennis Rodman got in everybody's head. He was also really good at certain things. He could rebound out the wazoo. He was a physical fighter. He would play and he would go to, well, whether you voted for Trump or not, you like him or not, getting in, you have to recognize that part of his strategy is the same notion of the way Rodman played basketball. And I tossed that out as a side, recognizing that some of my Republican friends who like Trump might be like, wait a minute, you're criticizing Trump. Some of those that hate Trump, like, aren't you going to go out and say something bad about Trump? No, I'm trying to point out how you can look at this clear-eyed and say, well, what do I want to do? The more we focus on Trump being the problem, the more distracted we are from fixing what the reality is. He's leveraging the things in the system, the incentives in the system that we have allowed to be what they are today. And some people, it's leveraging it for something that is really good and helping them, and others, they feel opposite. And so I believe that when we say America 250, we need to make it about America, and we need to make it about each other and our interdependence, and not just about a polarizing political figure, whether it's Trump or anybody else.
Wow, that was insightful and interesting. And, it really, your insights and your perspectives are really inviting me to reflect on my own behavior, my own thought processes. And you've opened up new opportunities for me to live into our shared vision of courageous citizenship and interdependence. And I'm excited about what's coming. And I feel like the time around your convention is going to be a critical time to shape each of us internally, as you say, but our country, because our goal and my goal, I think we share the goal of putting this idea of courageous citizenship, making it as an option, making it available to people. People don't even know it exists. And it's the same thing about a supermajority cross-partisan movement that offers a new covenant for America. Like, that is what's possible. But we have to, we have to, and I feel an acceleration. I feel like the timing of your event is really potentially historic, actually.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's the passion and work of people like you who are taking this initiative in your area and then moving forward. I mean, that's the way you live, and what you do, Paul, is the personification of what we're talking about.
And you are a revolutionary optimist, in my view. So there you have it. Well, thanks again for being on the program, and we look forward to staying connected and being part of this revitalizing the American dream. Yeah.
Thank you.
That was an amazing interview with the new CEO of Braver Angels, Maury Giles. My heart opened as Maury taught us his vision and his understanding of the situation that we're in. And he helped me re-understand the Declaration of Independence by saying that those folks knew that they were putting their lives at risk, and they dedicated their sacred honor in the spirit of understanding that they were in this together. They were recognizing their interdependence. That's a profound and deep understanding of how our country was birthed. And as we approach the 250th anniversary, Maury talked about the imperative, the urgency of renewing the American covenant. And I couldn't agree more with him. So he is undoubtedly a revolutionary optimist. He's a big spirit and a shining light of vision and commitment. And I'm so honored to be working with him and his whole Braver Angels movement. Thank you.
Are you ready to be part of the revolution? To learn more about building movements, please visit unify-usa.org. To get to know Dr. Zeitz, please visit drpaulzeitz.org. If you like this show, be sure to follow on YouTube or your favorite podcast app so you don't miss an episode. Revolutionary Optimism, transforming the world one episode at a time.